Global Gridlock News Report. In a significant development that signals a dramatic shift in the global economic landscape, the US dollar's share of foreign exchange reserves held by BRICS nations has fallen below 60% for the first time since 1995. This decline comes amidst growing discussions within the bloc, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, on the need to reduce dependency on the greenback and to establish a new multipolar financial order. As BRICS countries diversify their reserves, opting for alternatives such as the Chinese yuan, gold, and other national currencies, the move highlights a deliberate strategy to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar in international finance. Before we proceed, please like, comment, and subscribe to help us with the YouTube algorithm. The decline in dollar reserves is not merely a technical adjustment, but rather a broader response to increasing geopolitical tensions and economic sanctions targeting key BRICS members, most notably Russia. In the wake of sanctions following the annexation of Crimea and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Moscow has been accelerating efforts to minimize its dollar holdings. This trend has resonated with other BRICS members, each with their own economic and political motivations, fostering a collective resolve to mitigate risks associated with US economic policies and the weaponization of the dollar. The timing of this decline is particularly telling. According to recent data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the US dollar now constitutes only 59.8% of BRICS foreign exchange reserves, a far cry from its peak of 71.5% in 1999. Analysts attribute this reduction to a series of coordinated moves by BRICS central banks to offload dollar-denominated assets and accumulate alternative stores of value, such as the euro and the Japanese yen, as well as more unconventional holdings like the Australian and Canadian dollars. One of the major drivers behind this shift is China, the world's second-largest economy and a dominant force within the BRICS alliance. Over the past decade, Beijing has been advocating for a greater role of the yuan in international trade and finance. China has engaged in several bilateral agreements with countries such as Russia and Brazil to settle trade in their own currencies, bypassing the dollar altogether. These moves are part of a broader strategy, known as the de-dollarization campaign, aimed at reducing the vulnerability of BRICS economies to US monetary policy and geopolitical maneuvers. Russia, too, has made significant strides in reducing its reliance on the dollar. Following the imposition of sanctions in response to its actions in Ukraine, Russia's central bank has cut its dollar reserves drastically, favoring the euro, the yuan, and gold. This reallocation is viewed as a defensive strategy to protect the Russian economy from the adverse effects of Western sanctions and to strengthen its financial sovereignty. Meanwhile, Brazil, India, and South Africa, though less vocal in their criticism of US economic policies, have also expressed concerns over the dominance of the dollar and its impact on their own economic stability. The decline of the dollar's share in BRICS reserves coincides with a broader weakening of the US currency's global standing. In recent years, the US dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency has been challenged by rising fiscal deficits, inflationary pressures, and a rapidly growing national debt. While the dollar still commands a considerable share of global reserves, standing at 58.3% worldwide, the trend suggests that many countries, not just BRICS members, are reevaluating their exposure to the US currency. For the BRICS bloc, the dollar's decline presents both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, it reduces the risks associated with holding a currency that could be subject to future sanctions or political leverage. On the other, it poses the question of what will serve as a viable alternative. While the Chinese yuan has gained traction, it still lacks the depth, stability, and international confidence of the dollar. Moreover, China's tight control over its financial markets and currency value poses challenges for its adoption as a global reserve currency. Nevertheless, the shift away from the dollar reflects a broader realignment in the global economic order, one in which emerging economies seek to carve out a greater role for themselves. BRICS countries have repeatedly called for reform of international financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, arguing that their governance structures are outdated and disproportionately favor Western powers. By reducing their dependence on the dollar, BRICS nations are also signaling their desire for a more balanced, multipolar financial system that better represents their economic weight and political influence. The implications of this trend extend far beyond BRICS. As these countries reduce their dollar holdings, demand for U.S. Treasury securities could weaken, potentially driving up yields and complicating the Federal Reserve's efforts to manage inflation and growth. A diminished role for the dollar could also impact the United States' ability to impose economic sanctions and influence global financial markets. For policymakers in Washington, the erosion of the dollar's dominance is likely to be viewed as a strategic challenge, one that requires a nuanced response to maintain the U.S.'s standing in the global economy. In response to these developments, U.S. officials have emphasized the resilience and stability of the dollar, pointing to its continued use in the vast majority of international trade transactions and its status as a safe haven asset during times of economic uncertainty. Yet the data from BRICS suggests that a long-term shift may already be underway, one that could reshape the future of international finance. As the BRICS nations continue to forge ahead with their de-dollarization strategies, the global financial system may be poised for a period of profound transformation. Whether this leads to a genuine multipolar order or simply a more fragmented landscape remains to be seen. What is clear, however, is that the US dollar's unchallenged reign is no longer a given, and the world may be entering an era of heightened economic competition and uncertainty.